starting
Okay.
out, do anything and you will get better,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
You don't have to like overthink it too much. But
Being
for the
able to love yourself and, validate who you are without any form of expression of it. And that's why I feel like that's what true confidence is in my head. Because
It gives us a journey of self-discovery through our art. Yours might be music or film or writing.
Always been my outlook on everything in regards to life. If I see anybody who has anything, my default is if they can have it or if they can do it, so can I.
We get to
Yes.
speak. We get to do a podcast. We get to work out. We get to. It's a privilege that people often complain and take for granted.
I want to ask you a question. How often is your mind in a clear state? Do you sometimes find yourself wanting silence? What many of us want in this busy world is just a bit of silence. So today, the topic I decided to speak about was silence and the importance of stillness and why we all need some time alone. And not just time alone, but time where there's no noise, there's no distractions. It's just quiet, still, right? Because in this busy world, this is what all of us crave. We crave time to ourselves, but not only time to ourselves, like watching Netflix, playing video games. That stuff's great too. But I'm speaking about, just peace. Why do you think like most people enjoy going up north or going to cottage, right? Wherever you guys are from. They enjoy going to the cottage and disassociating, disattaching from their normal day lives, right? Or people enjoy meditation, people enjoy prayer, people enjoy hikes and walks because when you seem to go out to nature and get into this environment where everything's kind of quiet and you're present, you don't do that very often. It's very hard to do that very often because of the responsibilities we have. There's plenty of responsibilities that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and even the idea of silence and stillness is almost seems far-fetched, right? Because there's just so much going on, and not even like your just day-to-day tasks in your day-to-day life, but also if you're trying to do more, if you're trying to post on social media or if you're trying to start a business on the side, like what time do you really have to be in a still environment, a quiet environment, and just think, right? So that's why I wanted to discuss this because I feel like it's such an important thing that we lack nowadays is time alone, time in a quiet environment. And I just want to speak my mind a bit on it. So I guess we'll get into this. And also, I recommend you guys go listen to Father Moses on YouTube. He is an Orthodox priest and he speaks about the faith of Christianity, but linked to what's going on in your day to day life. And he speaks about this, about prayer, and why he believes that men, for example, or men specifically, need time with God alone and need time in prayer in silence, not with a bunch of music and songs, but time alone with God. And that's where it comes to me because I was speaking about this with Leandro when I did that interview. If you guys want to check it out, should pop up here or something. Is I like being alone with God. I like contemplating my faith alone, right? Being by myself and thinking about God. That's what I love to do. Compared to going to a church or, growing up, I went to Portuguese festivals that were linked to the church. There was a lot of parties and stuff. And I just didn't like that environment where it's just so public. So, I feel like, at least for myself, I lose connection with God when there's too many people around, right? And you got to think like to yourself, I'm just thinking about this right now. I didn't even have this written down, but when you're with a lot of people, God is not really on your mind. When you're in a big social gathering or you're in an environment where there's a bunch of loud things going on, a bunch of crazy stuff. Like, if you go to the mall, you're not thinking about God. There's a bunch of stores you're looking at. There's people everywhere. You're not thinking about God. So if you go about life constantly being involved in loud environments and stuff, you're going to want to seek a little bit of silence. And even if you're not someone of faith and you don't believe in God and you're not connected to any religion or whatever, I feel like everyone still wants that. They want some stillness. They want some peace of mind, right? So that's why I wanted to speak about it. So why is silence so important? Because I could ramble on about like why we might want silence, like I was just doing, but why is it so important? The reason why it's so important is because you need time alone and time in silence to, one, dissect your thoughts, two, reflection, and three, self-discovery, right? All these things are linked together. There's no real like explanation for any one of them when it comes to being in silence and being in that state of mind where those things are able to happen. You need to understand that that's where those things are able to occur, right? Is when you're silent, when there's nothing going on, when you're in a quiet place. Because imagine trying to self-reflect during a party. It's impossible, right? So you need to say to yourself, I need time alone, time to reflect. And with this time of reflection, that's where you could come up with more and more wisdom. And the best testament to this in my own life was during COVID, because COVID happened and I didn't see anyone. I only saw my brother. My brother worked. I worked. A lot of times I was spent alone in my room. And it's crazy to me because that's where my self-improvement journey began, was during COVID. And while it was during COVID, I had a lot of time of self-reflection. I self-reflected on my relationships, self-reflected on what I wanted out of life. And all of that came because I was in a silent, still environment. I would have never had those epiphanies. I would have never had those new thought patterns and new data sets, as Nate Belmar and Luke Belmar like to say. I would have never had those things if it wasn't for being alone and being in my own thoughts, right? Being able to think things through. So that's why, like, you need to facilitate an environment where those things are able to happen. And that only ever happens if you're in a quiet environment, alone. And I have to reiterate this because being alone doesn't mean you're in a still and peaceful environment. Because if you're alone and you got Fortnite on the TV and then you got some music playing in the background, you think you're going to have time to self-reflect, and there's a bunch of, you're on your phone as well in between games. Like, there's so much stimulation going on, you're not going to have time to reflect. So that's why we need to consider the difference. Being alone and being in a quiet, silent environment isn't going to produce the same results, right? Because it's what you're doing when you're alone. It's not just about, being by yourself, because it's what you're doing when you're by yourself, right? So that's why silence is so important, is because those things are able to happen in a silent environment. So I want you to ask a question to yourself right now, is how often are you in silence, right? Because this is the thing, and this is where it comes, is the only ever time you're in silence is when you're trying to sleep at night, right? So you go about your whole day, you have all these responsibilities, all these things that need to be done, obviously. But then when you finally have time alone and time in silence, it's when you're lying down on your bed, right? When you're lying down on your bed, want to know what ends up happening? It's all the negative thoughts that rush through your mind. And when it rushes through your mind while you have your head on your pillow, you're not going to dissect them well. You're going to keep saying in your mind, why am I having these thoughts? Oh, I got to do this. I got to do that. Oh, there's so much stress going on in my life right now. I don't know how I'm going to get past this. That's what's going on. You're not able to dissect them and understand them and try to find solutions, right? That's the worst time, And that's even a huge thing too, is we only ever have silence at the worst time because it's right before we go to bed, and everything that just happened in your day, negative, positive, whatever, is rushing through at night, because that was the first time where, There was no screen. There was no stimulation with people. You weren't around a bunch of people. You weren't working on a task that needed to be done. So that's where all those thoughts are going to rush in. But what you need to do is set some time aside every single day for a silent environment, right? This is why I meditate on a daily basis, is because during meditation, there is no distractions. I'm sitting in my room, I am doing breath work, and I just focus on my breath, right? And then if thoughts do come, that's when I can dissect them and understand them and try to find solutions, right? And then also with prayer, I'll be honest with you, like when I pray, I'm not praying for that long. So I don't really see many benefits with that because I'm trying to talk to God. But when I'm meditating, that's where I have the silence that I need to dissect my situations, right? And it's even like I'm saying, maybe those negative thoughts rush during that meditation and I just allow them to be. But then when I go to bed, I don't have them because I already had those thoughts, right? So that's why you need to set some time aside every single day to, be in a silent environment, accept the thoughts that are coming into your mind, reason with them, come up with solutions, right? And this is the thing is once you get into something new, you don't, I don't know why I said that, but you don't need to go all the way in, right? And if you don't need to go all the way in with it, um, that's where you need to start doing small things, a small amount, right? Start small with this new thing of finding silence in your day-to-day life. Start with 5 minutes. That's all you got to do. Start with 5 minutes. And when you start with 5 minutes, that's where you could eventually progressively up the time. But 5 minutes, I'm telling you, man, 5 minutes alone in your own mind with nothing going on, no music, no distractions, no, notifications, whatever the case may be. I am telling you, you're going to see more progress with your mental clarity, right? So that's why you need to start small. Okay, so I'm looking at my sheet here because I do this completely raw. Uh, I'm looking at my sheet here, and I kind of already went over everything I wanted to say, right? Because it's pretty simple concept, right? Is one, we lack silence, so what do we need to do? We need to find it. We need to actively put it in our lives, right? So that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I guess ways you could go about doing it, kind of already touched on that. You could do, meditation every single day. You could go for walks, no phone, no distraction, like no music, just you in your own head. And yeah, that prayer, journaling's a good one. Journaling your thoughts, what's going through your mind on a day-to-day basis. That's very important. And yeah, guys, that's pretty much it when it comes to that. Also, I guess this just came up to me as well in my mind, is the reason why we don't like being alone in our mind too. And this is why maybe people avoid it and they always pick up their phone when they got nothing to do, or they're always listening to music and there's always something playing, right? Is because we're afraid to be alone because the negative thoughts come in. And that's why people avoid them, is because these negative thoughts, in my opinion, at least when they occur to me, it's because I need to fix something. There's something in my life that's hindering me or that's holding me back or that's bothering me. So it comes to my mind to find a solution, right? So if you give yourself no time of silence at all, not even in a week or something, when you do have any form of silence and any time alone, that's the only thoughts that are going to occur. No positive thoughts, right? Is now I'm able to just sit here and not be looking at anything, just look at the wall over there, and ideas will just come to my head. And I do this a lot when it comes to finding new niches for outreaching on copywriting, or finding new niches to outreach on the podcast, or coming up with Anto lifts ideas. I always do that now, where I'll just sit and stare at the wall, right? And I have productive thoughts. But if you're someone that is not in a quiet environment often and doesn't give themselves time to think during the day, when you do have that time, it's going to be negative stuff. So you need to start putting time aside so you can get rid of those. Let those thoughts occur, let them flow, and then eventually the productive thoughts will come into your mind, right? So be actionable with what I'm saying is what I'm trying to say. I guess I know I just said that twice, but be actionable. Actually set a time today to be alone in thought. be away from distraction, and tell me how you feel, right? And when these thoughts do come into your head, just accept them. Positive, bad, whatever comes into your mind, just accept those thoughts, right? Because we don't give ourselves enough time to think during the day, and we need to start doing this. I want to leave you with a quote, my friends. I've begun to realize that you can listen to silence and learn from it. It has a quality and a dimension all on its own. Chaim Potik. I don't know if I pronounced that name correctly, but I was going through Goodreads and I seen this quote and I thought it'd be very useful and very insightful, right? And that's the whole point of this podcast. So think about that. I've begun to realize that you can listen to silence and learn from it. It has a quality and a dimension all its own. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast and making it this far. It means a lot. It makes me happy. If you enjoyed it, remember to follow us on Spotify. We gain insight in order to move forward in life. Let me know in the comments what has been your favorite episode thus far, and let me know any actions you've taken after listening to the podcast, because I want to see some results. That will make me very happy. That's it, everybody. Take care, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.